Good morning, everybody. I believe we've got a few more coming in, but we try to start on time. So here we go. Before Catherine begins her presentation, I have an amazing announcement for you. Thanks to our State Government Relations Committee, as of July 1, when it becomes law, we will have a resident representation on our Pinnacle Board of Directors. Ray, let me hear it. Come on. We've been working on this thing for years. Yeah, celebrate. We're going to have to celebrate. You have the handout we gave you in the back, but I want to talk a little bit about it first, in case you have a couple of questions. And I also want to name the people most responsible for getting this work done. Martha Cole Glenn, as chair of the State VaCCRA Government Relations Committee. Barbara Rose as a member of that committee, and Dan Balfour, not as a member of the committee, but as an individual who had many contacts. Those three are the ones you need to thank when you see them in the hallway or at dinner or around. If not for the work those three people did, we would not be looking at this now. Now, a resident on the board. That's wonderful. That's the first time it's ever happened to CCRCs in the state of Virginia. That does mean this. They will be elected by either the resident council members or independent living residents. That decision will have to be made. We will get nominations. We will not have a vote on the board of directors, but we will be there as an advisor, which is more than we've ever had. And I think it's absolutely wonderful. I'm hoping, by the way, Sally couldn't be here this morning. That's the reason you got me. I'm hoping that Sally is going to be planning a celebration for all the residents here at Cedarfield to celebrate this. It was completely bipartisan, which is another miracle. I think that means people really understood why we needed representation on the board of directors. This also means that they're going to require the Pinnacle people to meet with us twice a year. And all residents have to be invited. That's a good thing, too. Read it, take it home, absorb it, and be ready to celebrate at a later date. Yes, John. I can't hear you. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah. I haven't heard, but it probably isn't.
I don't like the idea of a party.
It's not a party, it's a celebration.
Well, you don't do that. You knock somebody down and you walk away and say hallelujah, and you don't rub it in. I don't think that's a good idea.
Okay, we'll take that into consideration. What did he say? He didn't think we should have a party and a celebration because you don't knock somebody down and then walk away and say, we won.
Will all Pinnacle properties be able to have a representative, or are we only going to have one representative?
You going to answer that?
It would be one representative, as far as I understand it.
So the list of people will go to all the things, and then.
You mean the nominees?
So all the other properties.
The other properties,
On the same,
the other properties could have a nominee also.
so how are they going to pick one?
Up to the resident council and all the residents.
Go back to your microphone.
I recommend instead of the resident council making the decision, that it's all residents, which obviously will then include the resident council people, and that there is a request for submission for nominees, and then we can vote between those nominees.
Yes, I'm sure all those details will be worked out. It doesn't go into effect until July 1. So we've got time to talk, to accept recommendations, to think about it, and to make decisions. Let your voice be heard. As I've said to you more than once, VaCCRA is your organization. It is your voice. If you don't make your voice heard, no one will know what you're thinking, what you want, or what you need. And your voice has contributed greatly to the monthly meetings and lectures we have sponsored, because most of these have come from you. So let us continue to hear from you. Whatever you're thinking about this, let us hear. Any other comments before we get to Catherine? And I don't think any of the members of the committee are here. I was going to have them stand up and have you applaud them, but they're not here, so they'll have to get their applause another day. But when you see them, do congratulate them. They worked hard. Catherine? We are so pleased to have with us Catherine Henderson. You know her. She has been with us. She used to be a chaplain here. Maybe we could twist her arm. Oops, wrong side. Do we need to get?
Do I need an introduction?
No.
No, okay.
Catherine that says she doesn't need an introduction. She knows us so well, and she's been here so many times. Please welcome Catherine Henderson.
Thank you. It's like some kind of penny coming back, right? I don't know what that exact saying is, but it's always wonderful to be here. Thank you all for inviting me again. And we were just talking a minute ago about I'm not wearing glasses. I had cataract surgery last May, and it was successful, but I had to choose whether or not to see distance or close up, and I chose distance. So 3 years ago when I worked here, I wouldn't have been able to see y'all really, and I can see each one of you very clearly and crisply. It is awesome, but I'm gonna need these for doing this kind of thing. So you're gonna see me going back and forth, but it is just really wonderful to be here. And I know we're talking about a topic that is really a tough subject, and I just appreciate you all being here. It's not an easy thing to even just sit and talk about. I know y'all have had a particularly difficult stretch here, and really and truly, when I say my heart goes out to you, it does. When I worked here, I felt very much like I was part of the community, and I know that you all grieve together. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later too, but I just wanted to say that is a real thing. I know when Charlotte and Sally told me about what had been going on, I know how y'all are. You care so much. You live your lives together as a community, really and truly. And so when one of you is no longer here, you feel that absence, and it ripples throughout the entire community, and that's hard. So we're going to talk about that a little bit as well, but I want to keep this simple. I want to, because I literally could be here all day and only scratch the surface on what we know about grief as a process, as a physiological experience, as an emotional experience, as a spiritual experience. It takes our whole selves, our whole bodies to live it. And I literally could spend hours and hours talking about each piece of that. So I'm really going to keep it short and allow time for y'all to talk to me and ask me questions, just whatever might be popping up. Did y'all see the resource sheet in the back too? We'll go over that as well. I'll give you a couple of pointers about that when we wrap up, but there's a lot of good information in there as well. Again, nowhere near comprehensive. So let's see. I'm going to read this. It is a poem by the late poet W.S. Merwin. And I'm going to let you all read it, and then I'll read it. Separation. Your absence has gone through me like thread through a needle. Everything I do is stitched with its color. And just taking a few moments to take that in, because it's very short, but it says a lot. And one of the things about grieving that is hard is that it can feel like there's no way to truly express what you're feeling, what a loved one is feeling. And so often that's challenging when you go to offer someone condolences and sympathy. You don't literally know what to say or what to do. And one reason why I love this poem so much is because I feel like it comes as close as anything I've ever read to expressing what it feels like to miss someone, to just miss them. And so now we'll start on some of the data. There's no shortage of data for something that is essentially like just a lived experience. It's been studied actively as a discipline within the psychotherapeutic community for several decades now. And we do have a lot of amazing research. And you know, those of you all who know, you know I am a neuroscience geek, and I love studying science in general and how people tick, how they work. And so that's one reason why I do bereavement support, is because I'm always fascinated by our life journeys and what can I do that can help someone along the way. So I've tried to boil this down. Again, there's really, really, really a lot more that I could say, but these are the things I've been a bereavement coordinator off and on since 2015 and full-time for the last 2 years. And so I'm just going to consolidate the things that I have witnessed in the folks that I've cared for through the years these are the things that tend to be the hardest for them and that I get the most questions about. So the first one is grief is unpredictable. It's nonlinear. There's no rhyme or reason to it a lot of times, and that in and of itself is really hard. I always think of it like a book. Like, wouldn't it be nice if you could open a book and start on page 1 and finish on page 150, going page by page? But grief doesn't work that way. You start on page 1, and then you go to page 62, and then you go back to page 4. And the worst part is you never know what page you're going to be on any given day, really for quite some time. That, what I consider to be the acute phase of the grieving process, it can last 4 months. And that is very, very hard in a culture that doesn't recognize grief as a long-term, really, truly lifelong process. There is this notion that, oh, look, it's 11 o'clock, we've got to be okay now. And, you know, if you're lucky, you work for a company that gives you 2 days off for bereavement, maybe 3 days off, when in fact you probably need more like 2 or 3 months off just for starters. So that is a piece of this that is challenging. It's unpredictable, it's not going to go in a particular order, and it lasts for quite a while. There's also the experience of the loss being just unreal or surreal. Often folks feel numb for a while after losing someone, and that can come and go. That tends to subside with time, but the feeling of unreality, I'm going to get to this a little bit later in more detail, but, and really I could do an entire talk on it, but we have a lot of great neuroscience now that explains what is actually going on with those feelings of unreality. But that often lasts for several months, and it is usually right around the 6-month point after a loss that folks begin to really, truly believe that their loved one is not coming back. It takes that long for the brain to begin to learn what has happened. Again, we live in a culture that doesn't recognize that it would take that long, and so I often get calls from people around the 6-month mark saying, what on earth is going on with me? Why am I feeling this way? And it's because it quite literally takes time. And that leads to I should have reversed these actually. I'm going to do stressful next. All of the things I just described make the grieving experience extremely stressful. And in the resource list, there's a book I'll highlight for you in just a little bit that talks about this. It's been known for decades. I studied this as a psychology student undergrad in the late 1970s. So we've known for decades that the loss of a loved one is the single most stressful event in one's lifetime. And it does, like I said before, it affects everything. It affects how you are physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. It's all of it. I often think of it as when you lose someone you love, is that it's like getting a full-time job out of the blue for something that is not your area of expertise, something you not only don't know anything about how to quote-unquote do it, but you've got to do it 24/7. It's like you just got dropped into a pressure cooker, and it's constant. And that's the other thing about grief that is hard, that makes it so stressful, is it is 24/7. Even when someone is sleeping, they are grieving. And there's a whole, like we could do an entire day just on dreams and the experience of grieving and how it relates to the subconscious and dream state. experiences. There's a whole field that studies that. It is absolutely fascinating. We don't have time to do that now, but it speaks to the fact that even when we're sleeping, we are grieving. And so you can just imagine, and I know y'all have lived it recently, that stress, that mental stress, emotional stress, physical stress, it wears you out. You literally can have days where you just need to sit down and not do anything. And often people come to me and say, I feel so inadequate. I just, all I want to do is rest. And I tell them that's really normal. I also do, just so you know, like recommendation wise, I'll always recommend that folks go to their primary care physician and get checked out. Like, because sometimes there is an underlying cause that is not the stress related to the loss. I cared for one woman who turned out that she had Epstein-Barr virus, and that was causing just crushing fatigue, if you've ever known anyone who had that. So there are things that are like actual illnesses. I don't want to say that it's all stress, but stress is often a huge, huge part of it. And then we'll start with the neuroscience piece of it, which is grieving is actually a learning process. And that's partly what is so hard about it, is because, again, we don't live in a culture that thinks of it as a learning process. We think of it as like, well, you experienced this, just like you went to get a haircut, and now, you do the next thing on the list kind of experience. Grieving is not like that. It is truly a lived experience. And the reason why I chose the title for this talk to be Living with Grief is because we're all living with grief all the time. The question is, are we figuring out how to do that in a way that we get to where we coexist with it in a way that enables us to enjoy the rest of our lives? Or are we compartmentalizing it and basically avoiding grieving? That's a whole other, that would be a topic for another day, Charlotte. It's a big subject, and it's a hard one as well. So I'm just gonna touch on that. But really, the vast majority of people, probably 85 to 90% of people who are grieving, do eventually get to a place where they are living with their grief. It's part of their life story, and it's integrated into who they are. So it's something they're always aware is there. And when something sparks a memory, in grief work we often call it triggers, it can be very unsettling. Again, going back to number one, that grief can be unpredictable. I often think of the way that we grieve as being, if you've ever seen the psychological model of the subconscious being like, and the conscious mind being an iceberg, where what we see on the surface is a small percentage of what we actually are as human beings. Like below the surface, there's a lot of grief still, and little chunks of the iceberg can just break off, come to the surface years after someone has died, seemingly completely out of nowhere, and just knock you out. So it's developing the ability to have that experience years later and be able to say to yourself, this is normal, it's hard, and I still miss this person. I have my own word for it. I encourage the folks that I'm working with to, over time, develop their own vocabulary. The way I think of it is, I call it the void. For me, the people that I've lost that I really loved, I feel like there's always a place in my heart for them that it's an empty space. It's just nothing is ever going to fill that. And so I call it the void. And I live with the void. I mean, we all do, all day long, every day. But every once in a while, I will have an acute memory of my mother who died in 1988. And I'll start crying. But I recognize that that's what that is. Sometimes it's not that intense. It's just that feeling of, oh, that's that place where the person I love is. And so I call it the void. Everyone I've worked with pretty much comes up with some way to think of it. The important thing is the relationship that you have with that place for your loved one, is to be able to recognize that you still have a bond with them. You still have a relationship with them. It's just completely transformed into something that, let's be honest, none of us ever wanted, right? You don't want to be missing the person that you love, but they're not there anymore. So recognizing that you still love them, you still have that kind of loving bond and relationship with them, brings a lot of people consolation and can really help. And that would be another whole topic, Charlotte. Oh my gosh. Because that's a whole other category of conversation. It truly is. But just so you know that in the grieving process, the vast majority of people do get to where they coexist with the loss in a way that is meaningful for them, in a way that enables them to honor their loved one, honor the loss, and honor themselves, which is honoring their grief. So we're going to get to that in a minute. I want to pull up the, so here's some ways to begin to work through grief. And this is all on the handout, so you don't really need to be able to read this. I don't know what it looks like. Yeah, that's pretty tiny type. I mostly just wanted y'all to be able to see just a few key points, because there's really, truly many strategies, techniques for working with grief and for getting to a place where you are living with the grief. But these are some of my favorites. So I'm just going to review them real fast, and then I'll come back to them. The first one is really a breathwork technique that is so effective. It is taught now in all sorts of disciplines. You may have had a respiratory therapist teach someone you know this, because it relaxes all the axial muscles in the chest and enables people to breathe more easily. Well, let's just go ahead and do it. And you've probably heard me do it before too. So it is simply breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. And a respiratory therapist would tell you to smell the roses and blow out the candles. If you rest your hands in the center of your chest very gently, what that does, especially in combination with the breath, is it sends a signal to your parasympathetic nervous system to relax. And that's why it's taught a lot in a lot of different disciplines, and it's been studied actually quite a lot by neuroscientists and psychologists, because it really works. So let's just do that for just literally like 4 or 5 in and out breaths, in through your nose and out through your mouth. How did that feel? Anyone want to share an adjective, an observation? Just shout it out. Great. Calming. Did it feel okay? So the amazing thing about this breath is it will take the intensity of grief down a notch. And part of it is because it activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which tells your whole body, I'm not about to be eaten by a dinosaur. I can relax. That's how stressful grieving is. And so it doesn't stop you from grieving at all. What it does is enable you to move through the experience a little bit more easily. I suggest that you try that a couple of times a day, just for literally 30 seconds, a minute. The other nice thing about this is if you breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth, if you wake up during the night, which is common when folks are grieving, to have disrupted sleep patterns, if you're waking up but not fully awake yet, it will put you back to sleep. It is that powerful, relaxing breath. So in through your nose and out through your mouth. Just don't ever do it when you're driving, because it will put you to sleep. The motion of the car and the breath, you'll go right out. This is a huge, huge category. I've got the websites on there for you. If y'all have your sheet, if you want to make a note, all you really have to do is you can either go to Kristen Neff's website, theselfcompassion.org, or if you Google Dr. Kristen Neff, it's Neff, or Dr. Christopher Germer, it's Germer. The two of them have worked together for years. They have two different websites, and you see chrisgermer.com there is the second one. The reason that I gave you the very long link for that is because that's where he has a PDF for saying loving kindness meditation, which is really one of the most powerful tools that I've ever worked with for grief work or any kind of emotional work. Let's see, I'm gauging time, y'all. So did any of you all follow the, whoops, remember I can't see close up. I need the glasses to see the microphone. Did any of you all follow the monks and the Walk for Peace? Any hands? Anybody? Delante did. Okay, good. It was awesome, right? Like, it was very moving and powerful. So for those of you all who followed along, or if you look at their Facebook post or Instagram post, anything like that, you'll see that the person posting always finished with, may all beings be happy, may all beings have peace. So that is a Buddhist meditation originally. It has been co-opted by the secular non-Buddhist world. It has been studied by psychotherapeutic neuroscience academics for quite a long time now. And the reason it's been studied is because it actually works. It is a form of cognitive behavior therapy, and it's a very powerful form. I've practiced it since 2004. I can tell you personally that it is transforming when you practice the repeating the phrases. You can also write your own phrases. You can practice it a lot of different ways. I literally could do an entire morning just on loving kindness meditation. But the PDF that you see listed on Chris Germer's site, that walks you through it, the basics of it. There are whole books about it. Really, the best one, if you're intrigued by this, is by Sharon Salzberg, who is a famous Buddhist teacher, and the name of the book is Loving Kindness, and then the subtitle is The Revolutionary Art of Happiness. And it's because when you repeat those phrases, they're really a kind of prayer. They become part of your heart and not just your mind. So one thing that happens a lot of times when we're grieving is we try to think our way through it, and that's really tough to do. Loving kindness meditation enables your heart to give you the power to work through what you're feeling. And so those two first topics, two suggestions, those are a really good starting point if you're having a hard time with something. If you're feeling like, wow, I'm just not able to this is really tough. I'm really, really having a hard time. I just suggest giving them a try. The bigger topic of self-compassion is also a big discipline in the psychotherapeutic world now. When it first started out, again, about 15, 20 years ago, and you can listen to Dr. Neff talk about this at length, it was very misunderstood. People felt like the terminology self-compassion meant something very self-centered. It's really not. It is all about recognizing that grieving is really hard and it is a process. There's no easy way through it. And so forgiving yourself, essentially, for not being able to, quote unquote, get over it. I really could have put that in my list of top things that I hear people say to me. That's a big one, is feeling like they ought to be able to fill in the blank, but do better, essentially. So where the area of self-compassion comes in is helping people understand what each individual person's limitations are, because we all have them. So it's a huge topic, it's a huge field now, and there are a lot of resources for understanding it, reading more about it on both of those websites. So this is a trickier practice, and that's why it's not one of the top two. It's something that you can work with over time. Some people, it's a small group of people, just naturally do this. I think of them as like the silver lining people, and I was just born that way. I just naturally do that, and that is that I kind of automatically think of something I feel grateful for in connection with something that I'm unhappy about. And I'm not just talking about grieving, I'm talking about somebody cutting me off in traffic. This is like one of my strategies for coping in daily life. But it has been studied a lot by grief professionals, and we know that it actually does help with the integration of the understanding of what has happened. And that is, I'll give you an example. So let's just say that I'm very, very sad, which I actually was, and I still am just a little bit, that our office moved from our original location, which I loved. My office was like my nest, to a much bigger space near Chippenham Hospital. We moved a month ago, and I didn't want to leave. I'm a homebody, like I like my space, and I didn't want to leave my space. So I was genuinely sad. Our last day there, before I went into the office to finish packing my things, I literally sat in my car and cried for 15 minutes. Because I was sad. I was leaving my friends who worked in the building across from our building. Anyway, I was sad. And instead of saying a period at the end of that sentence, for me, I said, and I am grateful that we have a nice space to move into that is more appropriate for the entire team. It will make a huge difference for a lot of the people that I work with, having a bigger space, specifically a much larger conference room. Very hard to have, and we're required by Medicare to have in hospice a meeting every week of the team. You know, when you're sitting on each other's laps practically, that's not a very fun way to spend 2 hours. So every week, without adequate air conditioning, I might add, with the full sun beating on the room. So there were a lot of positives to the move. And so I just tried to, in my mind and heart, balance them out. So I was doing a dual process of honoring my grief. I mean, I didn't want to go, y'all. I really didn't. But at the same time, I knew it was going to be good for all of us and that it would be okay. And that there were things even in the midst of that to feel grateful for. So the reason that I say that that is a somewhat more advanced practice, if you will, instead of something to just start out with, is because in doing that, you don't want to just bypass the way that you're feeling. The key in making this work, if you do want to try it, is to genuinely feel the grief. You know, the grief is real. You're honoring that and what you're feeling. You're allowing that to fully be. It's like me sitting in my car sobbing for 15 minutes. That is a real thing. And then you say, and the rest of the sentence is, and I am grateful. This is going to be a good change, even though it's one that is not welcome. That's not the case when someone has passed. I realize that, so it's not a perfect analogy. A better example for someone who has died is remembering. Here's something that happens to people a lot. Grocery shopping becomes a nightmare because you go to the grocery store and there are all the favorite foods of the person that you loved. And if I had a nickel for every person who has apologized to me for standing at the checkout counter crying, I was actually in line one day when that happened, and the wonderful cashier, she said, "Oh, honey, this happens all the time. Don't apologize." And I mean, I don't even know how many family members I've had tell me about that experience and how bad it made them feel. And I always try to say to them, that is so normal, because it's the quote unquote little things that really are just a symbol, a reminder of your love and your bond and missing them and their absence. And it's part of to go back to the Merwin poem, you know, it's part of what the thread has sewn, you know, like those little things, like strawberry jam for one woman. I always think of that, you know, like how hard it was for her to, like, she just a lot of times wouldn't even walk down that aisle so that she wouldn't have to see it. And so for her, part of working through the grief and getting to where it was part of her daily life was to be able to go to the jam and jelly section again and say to herself, and this is where I'm getting to the dual process, wow, I really miss him. I really miss him. And I have so many happy memories of so many breakfasts and how much he loved strawberry jam. So instead of seeing the strawberry jam as only a symbol of how much she missed him, she began to see it as also, and that's the key word, is also a symbol of how much he loved strawberry jam, and it made him happy, and it made her happy that it made him happy. So is this making sense? Does that sound so? If you want to try it, start with something small. Just remember, feel the sad part along with the whatever piece of it you feel grateful for. And so this goes into a little bit of detail about it. Just the joyful memory can also, a lot of times, like when a joyful memory comes up, it's just the reverse. It leads to a sense of sorrow. So it's I think of it in my mind as if there are two balls in each, well, a ball in each hand, and sometimes the ball that is really sad that is sorrow, it's not super heavy. Like you can kind of hold it in this hand pretty easily. But then sometimes, like, it's really, really heavy, and it's really hard to have the ball that reminds you of the joy and the gratitude. It's hard to even lift that, right? So that is part of how that it's an exercise works, is to literally think, I've got both of these sets of emotions. And one reason why, as time goes by, that can be really a valuable thing to do is, again, we live in a culture that has a very hard time with multiple emotional states simultaneously. It's one reason why the chaotic nature of acute grieving is so hard for people who are outside the grief experience to witness, because they literally, like I said before, don't know what to do with someone else's grief. And so that's one reason to practice it for yourself, is knowing that it is normal to have multiple emotional states simultaneously when you're grieving, and that they're all okay. I think that's a question that I do get a fair amount of the time, is feeling guilty for feeling happy about something, and especially related to a loved one. And so again, I go back to the shifting back and forth. They're both still there, they're both present, both states, but it's okay to just move back and forth between them and not have them just be, it's all or nothing. I think a lot of times we live in a world that thinks it is either like one thing or another. When it comes to grieving, it rarely is. And I just want to put in a plug for, did I actually put this in here? I think I accidentally deleted it. I did. So this is really key. I should have it at the top with the basic practices, and that is gratitude in and of its own self. And the practice, the specific practice, do any of have y'all ever kept a gratitude journal or done any gratitude practices? They first started becoming popular about 30 years ago, thanks to Oprah Winfrey. They actually work. We now know that too. That's been studied an awful lot. So here's the very most basic way to do that is literally every day write down one thing that you feel grateful for. Can be about anything. It can be for having a cup of coffee, for a sunny day. Like, it can be absolutely anything. But the reason that that is important is because it sends a signal to your brain that your life is not entirely grief. And that's important when you're grieving, because it's, again, going back to how hard it is on the body, that can really help. A friend of mine, when I lived in Massachusetts, her husband died in his sleep. He was 50 years old, and massive heart attack. And Robin and I were talking a couple of years after Mike died. She was a social worker in hospice with me, and what got her through those first 2 years that were so hard. And she said her therapist had given her the practice of writing down one thing a day. And she said, let me tell you, there were days where it was really hard to write down one thing. But she did it day in and day out. And by the end of that first year, she noticed that she was finding things to feel grateful for again. So that's another basic one. Sorry, I deleted that. Okay, I was moving too fast, y'all. So is it? Do you see it? Okay. Oh, excellent. I thought that's where it was, but then I'm not seeing it. Okay. So anyway, the key word that I do see the word bittersweet. I really love that word a lot, because to me that does kind of encapsulate this notion of, this is really, really crazy hard. It's bitter. Like, if you've ever eaten anything that was truly bitter, That's not enjoyable for most folks. And at the same time, the sweetness is that love that you share, the memories, the genuine joy at remembering that love. So it's both, and that's why for me the word bittersweet works. And all of that has to do with something that is called perspective, which is when we're grieving, it is very, very easy to develop a form of tunnel vision where the grief becomes self-perpetuating. It doesn't happen all the time, but it can happen. And so if you have a cue for yourself, if you notice that happening, that I like the example for myself. I'm an amateur photographer. I remind myself to just open the lens up. You know, I'm on macro level. I'm seeing stuff way too closely. I need to stand back and see the bigger picture, which there's way more to the story than just the loss. And that fits into an entire category called narrative therapy. Any of you all familiar with narrative therapy? Have you ever practiced this at all? So the whole notion is that we all have a story, and we begin telling stories about our lives worldwide. This is fascinating. No matter the culture, about age 3, we begin to tell stories about our lives. And the stories that we tell ourselves about our lives then begin to inform what we believe about our lives and how we see our experiences as well. They create the framework for how we begin to encounter our lives. And with narrative therapy, the beauty of that is you begin to discover what the story is with the loss as part of the story. So it doesn't ever make it okay. That's the one thing that I like. If I had a pet peeve, it would be the notion that you quote unquote get over a loss, because you don't. But you can get to where it becomes part of your story, and it becomes not only a sad part of your story, but something that you feel grateful for. And so narrative therapy is a form of individual counseling, and I've got some resources for you if you are interested in pursuing something like that ever. The other thing you can do, of course, I know you all know about the wonderful grief support group here, facilitated by Carl Netting. It meets does it still meet the last Monday of every month? I'm pretty sure it does. Carl is really wonderful. He facilitates a grief support group for the hospice where I work, for our staff. So it makes a difference if you ever feel like just dropping in and seeing. The one thing I will say is support groups don't work for everybody. It's not everybody's thing. And sometimes it's just hard to hear other people's stories. Sometimes it really bonds you. So it can work a lot of different ways. But I just encourage you to maybe check that out at some point. And let's see. There we go. So now I'm going to put my glasses on. Oh gosh, y'all, it's almost 11 o'clock. I'm so sorry. I do want to do that. So I want to just hold this up because it's not on the PowerPoint. So on the flip side where it says bereavement support, that's actually the front page, bereavement support resources. Full Circle Grief Center is on Staples Mill Road. It is a dedicated nonprofit grief support organization. If you wanted to do individual counseling or a grief support group with them, they are really, really wonderful. I refer folks to them a lot, and I know a bunch of the staff there. I know that their registration process can be tricky, and if it's just not going very well, by all means give them a call and they will help you with it. The one thing that I highlighted in here is the page that says resources and training. That one page alone has literally link after link after link with support resources. The whole website is just chock full of valuable, helpful information. But if you go to on the menu, if you see the section that says resources and training, you're going to find literally a treasure trove of resources. The other person I just encourage you to check out online is Dr. Mary Frances O'Connor. She is one of the world's leading experts on grief that does not subside over time, and her work it's really been groundbreaking. She's also very accessible. She's easy to listen to, and if you Google her, you'll get a bunch of stuff that comes up for you. I picked the ones that are some of the talks that I like the best, and her 2 books they're science. They're not fast reads, but they are both very good. The Grieving Brain and The Grieving Body, if you want to learn more about just sort of the nuts and bolts of all of this, which again, that helps me. The biggest thing for me that helps is knowing that what I'm experiencing is normal. I'm not, there's nothing wrong with me because I'm grieving. It's part of the human experience. And ultimately, it is mysterious. It is, in a lot of ways, something that has a lot of, we can understand a lot of facets of it. We can understand a lot of how it, quote unquote, works. But there's no real explanation. It is truly part of our lived experience of being a human and loving one another, and loss, and all of that is part of our life journey. So I am gonna stop there. And do we have time for some? I have time.
If you want to speak to Catherine
Yep.
privately, I'm sure she'll speak
Yeah.
with you. Unfortunately, most people have to leave.
Okay. All righty.
Thank you, Catherine.
You're welcome, babe.
I lost my microphone. Thank you, Catherine.
You're welcome.
Is this my mic?